began to get noted for doing that type of work, which in reality is equivalent to what we're doing right now. So it developed to the point where people were like, go to him. Networking helps in that. Being known for what you do. I'm not your typical suit and tie guy. Mm-hmm. You walk into a room and they know who you are. Sure. And I just use that really as a tool, a means of branding is how I look, right, how I appear. But what I also did is I changed my email address from high-res to Guru of Printing. Okay. So it became David at Guru Printing, and people began to I began to see more work funnel into me rather than my sales staff because of that.
That's so
and today that branding is, they're really focused on the fact that this is the guy, this is who we want to work with.
Welcome again, everybody, to the Zelnik Exchange. Today I have my good friend, David Drucker. We go back, I think we're coming up on 5 years now.
Yeah.
Our friendship has built. David is the CEO and founder of High Resolution Printing, a print consultancy and production management firm serving bi-coastal clients. He partners with creative executives and blue chip brand managers at the strategic level to enhance printing, packaging, and signage productions. With over 40 years of experience and deep technical knowledge of specialty printing directly translates into remarkable end products. Mm-hmm. David and I met through BNI, a networking group. We'll talk about that along the way. And as I told David pre-tape, he reminds me of Mark Boone Jr., and he said, "Who's that?" I said, "That's Bobby Munson on Sons of Anarchy." And then he told me he's also physically been told he looks like a short Sammy Hagar and Robert Plant. With all of that said, David Drucker, welcome to the Zelnik Exchange.
Thank you very much. I've been following you and the podcasts that you've been doing, and they're all great, very professional. And I thought this was a great place for me to be.
Thank you, and we're happy to have you. And as you know, I bring guests on to tell their story and basically to have a chat. And so let's talk about High Resolution Printing. You're doing it over 40 years.
Yeah.
Founder. Tell me how it started. Where did it come from? A little background on you.
I'll go back to my grandparents, my grandfathers. Both were entrepreneurs. One was in the shirt business, and the other had a store in Brooklyn, Flatbush and Flatlands. And, I could see through both of them, how they regulated their own time, how they were intensely focused on what they did. My parents are both very creative people. My mother in needlepoint painting, my father in painting and financial and just all around very creative person. And my sister is also a graphic designer and a very creative person. And I kind of didn't think I'd fit in there. And I learned, my sister was going to school in Rochester, and I was a musician. And that's what I was doing. I played in every single band. And my folks said, "So what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of doing it." And they're like, "No, you're not. You need a profession." And
did you have the Robert Plant Sammy Hagar look back then?
No. I was
Speaking of music,
short-haired, stubby little kid.
All right.
And my sister said, there's a printing program in Rochester, and I was a junior in high school, and I started taking shop classes, and I visited the school, and I met with the dean, and next thing I knew, I was in that school. Over that summer, I worked for a print broker here in Manhattan and learned so much more from that person that I took myself out of school. I did something else for a year, and I came back to New York on a Thursday, and by Friday, I had myself positioned with a job. Monday, I started it, and I worked for a series of people, maybe over the course of 2 years, and at the age of 23, I just started this. I don't know why. I didn't have production background, sales background. I really didn't know that much about printing. But 3 people said in the same week, why don't you start your own thing? Why don't you start your own thing? And I'm not one to listen to people bark at me, and tell me what to do.
Right.
And I started it, and I started really small. We were down on Varick and Spring,
Sure.
and if you know that area back in the 80s was filled with printing companies.
Yeah, it was no, we're real estate guys, so we know what that was all about. It was like a printing district,
Right.
for lack of a better term. Now it's fancy schmancy Hudson Square and Disney and all that good stuff.
Yes. A matter of fact, at that time, Trinity owned the building, and they kept telling us they're changing the area to Hudson Square, and that was before the .com boom.
Sure.
But they did raise our rent 3 times the price in that conversation. But if, for printing to survive in those buildings, it was $8, $9, $10 a square foot, and now forget it. So everybody moved outside of the city. I was able to really build the business. I brought in a staff. We expanded. I wound up bringing in the productions that the larger printers didn't want to do, or they couldn't do.
And so half step back. So you moved out of Varick, or you're still working out of Varick Street?
We're working out of Varick Street. We had now moved across the street to
Okay.
137, which is now the Disney building.
Yep.
Yep. And we stayed there until 9/11.
Okay.
And right after 9/11, we moved South Canal Street because there were many benefits from the SBA and loans. And I had moved into a building right on the corner of Canal and Avenue of the Americas. And unfortunately, we were subleasing.
Okay.
And I came in one day, maybe about 8 or 9 months after we moved in, and the doors were padlocked. And we were on the 6th floor there. Our landlord was on the ground floor. And the landlord of the building is like, we don't want you here. You're part of them. And I said, well, I've been paying our rent since. And they said, so we fought them in court for about a year. We got 6 months. They turned off our elevator. We had to walk upstairs.
Yeah. You were lucky to get the 6 months.
Yeah. Well,
6 months.
I think we had a little bit of sympathy because the landlord was, he was disrespectful of the judge.
Okay.
And that was taken into account. We then moved 3 blocks off of Ground Zero. And we stayed there for about 15 years.
Oh, okay. You're there for a while.
Yeah, and the whole idea was get down in that area. As it begins to build, we'll build with it. But my business actually went into a different direction as of that point. And there was a point where business was really, really bad. We had basically lost our business because of 9/11.
Okay, yeah, but I think a lot of people can make that same statement.
Right.
Right.
And the idea is how do you pivot at that time? What do you do? And I went and began to go to networking groups that were related to luxury brands.
Okay.
And we wound up doing work for Tiffany and Cartier and a bunch of those type of companies.
Yeah, sure.
And we built it back up and developed a real strong reputation in the industry.
Okay, and which is fabulous, and I want to hear more about that. But how do you get in? What got you in the door? What did you do to get into that, division of the business? Right, that's a big shift, I would imagine.
It was a big shift, but you have to understand the type of business that we were getting. As I said, was the type that the large printers didn't want to do.
Give me an example of what that is.
An acrylic binder. MSNBC had just started, CNBC had just started at that time. Designer came to us and said, hey, we want to do these acrylic binders. Now, if you know anything about static electricity and doing a paint job on acrylic, the second you bring ink over that acrylic, all the dust begins to settle on there. And it was a hard challenge, but the end result is that we wound up doing that production 3-4 times for different organizations. and we began to get noted for doing that type of work, which in reality is equivalent to what we're doing right now. So it developed to the point where people like, you know, go to him, go to him, go to him. Networking helps in that.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
Being known for what you do. You know, I'm not your typical suit and tie guy. You walk into a room and they know who you are.
Sure, sure.
And I just use that really as a tool, a means of branding, is how I look, how I appear. But what I also did is I changed my email address from high-res to Guru of Printing. So it became David at Guru Printing, and people began to really, I began to see more work funnel into me rather than my sales staff because of that.
That's so interesting.
And today that branding is, you know, they're really focused on the fact that this is the guy, this is who we want to work with. We moved after the 15 years of downtown up to Union Square. Then the pandemic happened, and my sales staff went elsewhere. One guy retired, one guy moved out to Arizona. I had this big empty office, and you know, what am I going to do with it? And after a year, I just closed it down. And I had about 2 days of depression. What am I going to do? I've just built at that point 38 years of business, and there's nothing. No events. I mean, that's what we were doing. We were doing events, we were doing signage, there's nobody new coming out with new work. And over the course of these 38 years, I never really spoke to anybody in my industry but my vendors. The reason being is that I began to show my work, and I began to see my ideas being stolen by other people.
Interesting.
So I just kept quiet. That was number one. Number two is I never left Manhattan. All the low fruit, everything was right here in Manhattan, and there was no reason for me. So I was really, once you cross the GWB, I was not a known vendor.
That's interesting. I would think, given technology, social media and things. I know the social media part, we'll talk more about that, really picked up over the last few years. But I would just think that where you were physically located wouldn't seem to matter.
Well, you know, it's all in the head.
Okay,
that's really what it comes down to. And though I've been on LinkedIn since 2011, I never really used it. I was fishing.
All right.
It was, what can I get from you? I'd look you up and I see who the people you're attached to, which is a great thing to do. But I began to post all that work that I never showed, and people started responding to it from outside of New York, from California, Texas, Chicago, Europe, and then we started getting business in from those companies. So now it was, my base of clientele has expanded, but also how I looked at business is very different. I have a series of clients that do events, and they do them all over the world. And this, for instance, I'm doing something now, a client called up, they said, hey, we have an event in London in 4 days. We need, you know, all this material. And because I know equipment, I find out who has that equipment there. And I print there. I produce it there. So it's waiting for them there. I know what the outcome is going to be. It's what, you know, standardized commercial printing. It isn't that intricate thing where I have to put my eyes on it.
You're effectively a broker, right?
I am a broker. I'm a broker, but I'm more so, a broker is someone who takes a job and gives it to somebody else. But when you begin to consult and you have an idea of what you want that end result to look like, you begin to dictate what that is. And to find the right supplier who's going to get out of their head and understand that what you want to do is not necessarily a commodity. We're using your presses in a different different way than you're used to. Can you do it? And I'm like, but then we go through it and all of a sudden the light goes off because now they see that they can use their equipment in a slightly different way than they had before. And now they're inspired to how else can we use this equipment?
So you really serve as an advisor for both sides, right? You have the client with needs, you have the contact with the equipment, and then you talk to them about how to best utilize some of that equipment.
Right, but on the front end of it,
right,
we're working now with 3 different startups. They're starting their branding. They're working with designers. The designer shows me a palette of colors that they want to use. I want the full scope of, well, we're going to be producing packaging, we're going to be utilizing paper, we're going to be doing signage. Knowing what all these substrates are, you zero down and you say, you have to go with this color. Okay. Well, why do you have to go with that color? Well, this one has too much red. We're never going to find paper that's going to go with it. We're never going to find fabric for your packaging. Right. So what we just did is eliminated weeks and weeks of someone sitting around trying to figure out what to do, how to do it. We just eliminated all that, so now our focus is here, and now we can begin to build on that. Once we get that down, that information down, I can now go visit my suppliers with, instead of we need this quote 10 different ways, now we need the quote 2 different ways.
Right, this is what we need, how much is it?
Right. And what it does is it makes my suppliers' job much easier than having to go through it. And they know that I'm collected and I know what I want, and you get a direct answer.
And overall, much more cost efficient, right? Someone spending, if you have to go multiple samples and things like that, I know it may be one-offs, but it's still time and money that gets wasted. I remember when we used to do these back in the day, and then, someone like, David Drucker would show up and they'd bring this and they'd come in and then there's 12 examples to start to figure it out. Well, those 12 examples cost somebody money, cost somebody time.
The process is also very different, my upfront process. Where I used to carry bags of samples, I carry about 5 things, and I put them out, and we begin to have a discussion, and you begin to hear the direction of where people want to go. I did that for me because it makes that process that much easier, and you're coming at what I'm seeing is you're coming out of an intense digital age, and people are introducing printing again as well. Well, these designers have built everything in a digital arena, and it doesn't translate to print. But what we do is help them into getting into that direction. It's a learning experience for them. My goal is to inspire the people I'm speaking with, but I'm looking for them to inspire me as well. You never know where that goes, what it's going to bring up, and it's very much like networking. I sit there and I speak with you, and something pops into your head, and you say, "Hey, I know this guy up the block that I know that they're starting a new store. They might need some, printing." It's all through conversation, and you learn a lot about the people at that time.
Absolutely. As well. So a few bullet points here. One, when David and I met through our networking at BNI, I quickly used you for my thank you notes. I have some of the best thank you notes in the land because of you. I think we might have done a business card also. I forget, maybe in the beginning. I don't know.
I mean, we did your envelopes, but we also put the orange on the inside of the envelope.
And we changed it in my card, and it's fabulous. And then when we moved into this office here recently, about 8 months ago, you helped with our banners and the wall posters, the graphics there, tremendous. And so I love your work and I appreciate it. So it's a little, it's not a self-serving compliment, it's a compliment because the stuff is great. But that came about because we're sitting in that group, and so that was a networking group, no idea. Hey, boom, right time, right place. And so I get that, but I want to go back to the conversation we left off, and I was asking you, and we diverted, which is perfectly fine, how you got into the bigger brands like the Tiffany's of the world, So that's one question, and then I'm going to ask you. I'll give you a heads up. That I'm going to ask you the impact of AI. But let's talk about the brands and how you got there. And I say that because I believe it seems like it's a tough nut to crack.
It is, but I landed the right networking group at the time. It's called the Luxury Marketing Council.
Okay.
And at that time, for me to join that group was about $14,000.
Okay.
But you met all the marketing people of these great organizations,
Sure.
and it's a matter of building trust.
Of course.
You're brought in, and you have a discussion, and if your discussion sounds different than everybody else's discussion, then you led into a direction.
Yeah.
I used a lot of that to influence me. There were a lot of productions that I did that I had never done before, but I had to educate myself on boards, on fabrics, on so many different techniques that I was able to then apply that to the next conversation, And this is what it's all about. I took that as a personal challenge to bring in that work.
Mm-hmm.
But once you're done with that challenge, you're looking for the next challenge.
Right.
And it's still to the point where I can't say no.
Okay.
I want to say no. If you saw what's on my desk right now and what we're producing, maybe half of the work there I would prefer not to do, but it's become very easy for me to get it going. And I've also learned this. I've also learned that by expressing a direction, not just being the yes man. Okay, yeah, I'll take your work.
Sure.
I'll do it the way you want to do. So this is from something from Tiffany. They every year had been producing this catalog.
Mm-hmm.
It's a catalog of the rarest jewelry. It's one piece, and they've been doing this catalog every single year. They had a huge budget to produce it, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, who are you showing this to? And they're saying, somebody comes into one of the stores and we hand them the catalog. I said, but if I'm a buyer, I want to put the pieces out.
Right.
I want to look at everything and say, I want this, I want this, I want this. You can't get that from a catalog. And we wound up changing it into a really nice box with heavy, thick cards on the inside, beautiful printing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time that I ever really expressed the direction I wanted to go in.
Okay.
And I just said, well, that's my learning experience here. I'm going to continue to do that. And I found that, people, designers, get rid of that yes person. Get somebody who is part of your creative team. And in working with anybody, my position is to be right there when they're planning.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's and it's not about bringing this to real estate, but in our world, we represent clients, we represent landlords, we represent tenants, and what we do is the way we pitch, because we're not out there like you say, like you refer to yes men, right? Or yes people. We here, the way we run the business here, we're a small boutique shop, and we try also not to be just yes, yes, yes. And we try to become, and we do the best we can, to be in partnership with our landlord or with our tenant.
Right.
And so I don't have 20,000 tenants. I have a handful of tenants. I have a handful of landlords. And we've represented for a very long time because we engage as their partners. You have to work to get to a place with them, and that's how we operate. So I definitely see a similarity in your approach and the style that we have.
You're right, and if we begin to look at who our client base really is, as you said, is a very small group of people.
Yeah.
Over time we've had hundreds, if not thousands, of clients, but it's really that small core group.
And we're very similar because, and someone described me, and I get a kick out of it, from our business perspective. They said, Cory's a sniper. He doesn't want all this. He hones in, focuses, and goes after it. And you don't get every one, but you get a lot. And that's how we've done our business. My relationships with some of my clients go back, 10, 15, 20 years, and they continue.
Yeah. Well, what we're finding now is that all the juniors junior creatives that were, 30 years ago are now marketing executives. So we've gotten back into them. Some of them we haven't heard from for 20 years.
Right.
And now we're right back working with them. And it's great. It's like family.
And has some of that, because you mentioned LinkedIn before, has some of that come from social media outreach or just long-standing relationships?
I think all of my success has come from LinkedIn.
Really?
All of it.
All of it? Wow,
Yeah.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah, because, so what people began to see, over the course of the pandemic, people moved out of the city.
Right.
You don't have phone numbers anymore. Whether they want to respond or not, whether they're in the background and they don't necessarily want to like what you're putting in, they're there.
No, we call that because we do a lot of social media. We do LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and we call the group of people that you just referred to as lurkers. Right?
Right.
They're not responding to things or whatever, but they're watching you.
Yeah.
And they keep an eye on it.
I clearly see that. I got a call yesterday from somebody I did a business card for in 2018. They moved out to California. His response was, I did work with you a long time ago, and I've been following you on LinkedIn, and we have these 2 luxury packages that we want to produce.
Right.
Well, that's it right there. I mean, for me, that's the yellow pages.
Absolutely.
That's where you look it up, and on top of that, you now get to go and scale right down all the posts. Somewhere in there, you're going to find yourself.
Yep.
You're going to find what you do. I did signage for you. It's up on LinkedIn. Somebody's going to come in there and say, well, it's good enough for Cory. It's good enough for me.
Right.
And
Right.
So I use that. What it also did for me is it connected me with somebody in California who began to make videos of my work, which got me into a publication who asked me to write. I've never written before. I've done 2 articles for them already, which got me into doing the podcasts. I'm 3 years. I have a podcast called Making It with Print. We're in 146 countries. We rank really high on Apple, and it's really surprising to me who listens.
Right.
But it seems like my industry is listening.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's what we put out. We put out useful information. I speak with another printer who is very much like I am, which I've never done in all my years.
Because they were
Competitors.
Right.
And he and I, we've even had cross references of clients. But I can begin to have a conversation with him, and he'll pull out, from what he did 30 years ago, and we'll begin to discuss that. And I've had other printers call me up and say, I had an issue with producing the job, but after listening to you 2 guys, you helped me resolve it.
That's great.
So
And that'll come back. And it's the same. I'm in an industry where it's extremely competitive. Right? We're a commission-based business, but via social media, myself and a handful of peers in the industry in various categories within the real estate business are very open. And I don't want to say honest because that makes people dishonest, but we're open and honest about what's out there. We try to help the next generation. We try to be more candid with what we're doing. There's certain proprietary information here or there, but we try to be a lot more open about it. And I've had people from other firms call me up and like, oh, holy shit. And you do that, they won't tell their boss because it's usually the Gen Zers or even the millennials that'll call and ask for guidance, and I'm more than happy to share. I'm not looking to steal their business. I'm happy to guide them.
You have to give of yourself.
100%.
I have found, we say it in BNI.
Giver's gain.
Giver's gain. And you put it out there.
Yeah.
It's immediate how it comes back.
Yeah.
You hang up the phone here giving this advice, and all of a sudden you open up an email and somebody's talking about something similar where the advice is, and so I've just learned to be free of giving information.
Great, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. We must, since we're talking about BNI, shout out our good friend Todd Symbol because he brought us together. Shout out Todd. Your business is fabulous.
Thank you.
obviously I'm a fan and a follower, and partially why you're here. But you're a great human being. Last business question for the moment.
Sure.
AI, any effect? How's it playing out?
I kind of made the commitment that I'm not going to get involved because I'm not winding down, but I'm very comfortable with how I do business. But for instance, with my podcast, we're given 4 or 5 questions, and we respond to those questions.
Right.
Well, I knew all the answers because I'm living it right now.
Okay.
But I put that into ChatGPT, and I format it the right way, and it gave me back everything. A perfect response
Okay.
to those questions, and then I rewrote it in my language.
Sure.
And in that respect, it's really worked. As far as design is concerned, it's very easy to use design. It helps to get you there sooner. For instance, somebody talked to me about doing some bottles.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about a bottle that's frosted, it's got a twisted neck. You put that information in, you get 6 ideas. Now, I could present those ideas to a client, but those aren't my ideas.
Right.
But they are talking points. They take months off of the planning stage and at least gets you in a direction. At that point, you got to drop it.
Right.
My feeling.
Okay.
It helps you to get there, but you need that human creativeness.
I hear you loud and clear. I mean, in a simple form, like some of the younger guys here, if they want to do an introductory letter and they bring it in to me to see what I think, and I'm like, all right, that's ChatGPT. You want to personalize it a little bit, so I get that part. But from a physical perspective, so we were working on a project on an older building that needed renovation, remodeling, whatever. If we were to go to market to bring in a new tenant, and punch some things into ChatGPT in less than 5 minutes. It would happen to be a property that was on Madison Avenue, and I had a fully designed exterior renovation, a fully designed interior Madison Avenue boutique. It was unbelievable.
Well, it's a point of reference,
Yeah.
and it's a starting point.
Yeah.
To use it the right way, to put in the right information. You can't be la-di-da about it.
Of course.
I from experience know that you have to be very specific about what you want, and then begin to use it as a tool, as a point of conversation, and then
as a guide.
And then you need to put it into your own words, and you need to put your own swing on it. So the answer is yes and no.
Okay.
I'm a little bit old school.
Yeah.
But I've been using it more so in the last few months, and I'm kind of scared for what it's going to do to future employment, taking over jobs. Who needs these thinkers out there?
Well, it sounds like it may take away some of the, may have a bearing on some of the creative, but not the physical.
Well, let's hope not. I mean, like you said, you have somebody here that put a letter in and it looked like ChatGPT, and some people stop right there.
Yeah.
This is the end result. It's not the right end result because it doesn't allow you to use your knowledge.
It's a thing to watch. Quick funny story. A friend of mine goes to the supermarket the other day. This is literally happened. He went to the supermarket the other day. His wife asked him to pick up heavy cream. Goes to the dairy thing. Can't find the heavy cream. Takes a picture of the refrigerator with all the merchandise into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said it's in the upper right-hand corner with the green label you didn't see. So it's really real in certain respects, but I think it's going to be, in the end of the day, the same with the real estate aspect of it. I think it's a guide. It'll guide you to a place, and then you can go from there. So I love your story, right? 42 years and going, even though you're talking winding down, you're not going anywhere. You'll be around for a while.
No, it's too much fun now.
Let's talk about fun. You're a motorcycle enthusiast.
Yeah.
We can't be here and not talk about it.
No. I started riding when I was 35, and I think the biggest fear was telling my father that I want to ride. And, you know, he's like, hey, you know, that's a big risk. I said, Dad, I own my own business. I mean, I'm taking a
Even at 35.
Yeah, I'm taking a risk. I mean, that's what I live every day. And in my dreams, I was riding a motorcycle. I had the Harley belt buckle way before I had a motorcycle. And it kind of like just fell into my lap. And I just began riding. And many years later, my wife was like, well, I want to go with you now. And, you know, what do you think? What kind of motorcycle should you get? And I got the biggest thing Harley makes with the couch and the speakers. And then I began to do some serious riding. I learned that not everybody is a great rider. So I was one of 4 that started a club. Actually, I was the 3rd member, to bring in top riders, people who would ride like me, that could ride fast and hard with these big, big bikes, but also there's a charity element in there. Let's start the group, let's raise money for charity, and that's what we're doing. We do many fundraisers, dollar for dollar, the money goes out to, you know, one of several charities. And this past year we decided that we're gonna keep some of that money, and you know, there was somebody in a couple towns over, kid had cancer, they needed money, you know, we funded them some of the money.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
you know, we've been very well known to be the good guys.
Do you have a name for your group?
It's called Jester's Highway,
Okay.
and we're an MC, meaning motorcycle club. In order to be an MC in this day and age, like Sons of Anarchy,
Right.
is a big deal, because, you know, Sons of Anarchy and the Mayans, they're all called 1%ers.
Right.
They see us as a threat.
Sure.
We're not a threat. And, you know, there are law enforcement riders, they're LCs, LEs actually.
Right.
And some of their members have said, we really like your group, we'd like to jump into your group. But we really don't want either one.
Yeah, it's not like you're motorcycle gangs. You're a club.
No, we're a club, and now we're 24, and we ride really hard, and you know, we do a lot of long distance. And one of our guys is 74, and he just took a trip out on Route 66 to the West Coast and back, and you know, that's what I dream of in retirement.
Right.
Is music and getting on a bike and going.
Good for you. Good for you. And I think you're headed there, but not too soon.
Not too soon. Not
Good.
too soon. Yeah,
Good.
it's all good.
David, this is a great story. I'm so glad I brought you in. I love listening. I could listen on and on and on, and I look forward to doing this with you again one of these days.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you very much.
Good stuff.